The world was threatened by Saddam Hussein and his country's weapons of mass destruction, and he had to be stopped. That the message from Tony Blair of the UK and George W. Bush of the US 20 years ago. For the second time on Revisited, we turn the clock back to the invasion of Iraq, the Second Gulf War. It was an invasion launched without any green light from the UN, and despite the open opposition from several members of the Security Council, including France.
Why go to war if there still exists some unused space in Resolution 1441? Consistent with the logic of this resolution, we must move on to a new stage and further strengthen the inspections. Given the choice between military intervention and an inspection system made inadequate by Iraq's lack of cooperation, we must choose the decisive reinforcement of the means of inspection. And this is what France is proposing today.
Despite that, the invasion of Iraq went ahead 5 weeks later. Major combat operations lasting little more than a month with the fall of Baghdad. But the war dragged on until 2011, causing in all the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Well, today, we revisit one of the cities that paid one of the highest prices in the war, Fallujah. It is in the so-called Sunni Triangle, the densely populated area north and west of Baghdad, inhabited by mostly Sunni Muslims who supported Saddam Hussein. It became the stronghold of a Sunni guerrilla movement, a fertile ground for jihadism, with al-Qaeda there morphing into Daesh or the Islamic State group in the 2010s. As our correspondent Lucile Wassermann with Cole Stangler have discovered, it is impossible for those who live there to forget the years of violence that changed their destiny forever.
عنصر من عناصر تنظيم داعش الإرهابي ضمن الإحداثية المذكورة أمامكم. تقع في محافظة الأنبار قضاء الفلوجة حي الشرطة.
From their headquarters, these special anti-terrorism forces are preparing to launch an operation against an Iraqi man they've been tracking for nearly a year. The individual is suspected of supplying improvised explosive devices to jihadists in the region.
بناء على معلومات متيسرة عن العدو يتضح أن هناك مسلكين للعدو هما أولاً محتمل وجود إنذار مبكر من قبل أشخاص الموالين له في المنطقة.
واضح شباب؟ هاي.
These special forces were created by the US at the start of the Iraq War in 2003. The goal at the time, to create a professionalized unit to lead targeted anti-terrorism operations. Including in Fallujah, where they're headed today.
The district of Fallujah was known for being occupied by al-Qaeda after 2003. We followed their leaders and their members there. We killed many of them. Some later left the region. But al-Qaeda in Iraq became ISIS. Those who'd fled then joined ISIS, and they came back to the cities under their name.
In 2014, the Islamic State controlled the city and 40% of Iraqi territory. While the US officially withdrew from Iraq in 2011, they returned as part of an international coalition to defeat the group, fighting alongside the forces they'd created a decade earlier. Victory was declared in 2017, but today the conflict drags on, step by step.
Okay, we're approaching our target now. It's a jihadist, so it's possible he's got a weapon or an explosive belt.
3 a.m. This elite unit begins operations, aided by the darkness. Women and children are present in a room next door. They too are interrogated. After a half hour, the operation winds down. Nothing is found at the residence. The suspects are taken into custody. They'll be interrogated in Baghdad and face trial. These special forces are seen as guarantors of stability in the country, standing between ISIS and its goal to rebuild itself. Today, they're still advised by the Americans, and that support is generally well received by the population. Still, it's impossible to forget the last 20 years in Iraq. For much of that time, the US was considered as an enemy of the people, particularly in Fallujah. Following the US invasion, this town of 300,000 quickly became a bastion of resistance. The Americans were largely seen as oppressors. This hostility reached a fever pitch on March 31, 2004. That day, the entire world learned of the existence of Fallujah.
On this bridge over there is where the incident occurred. American mercenaries from the private security contractor Blackwater were killed and hanged at this bridge. I got there at the end of the incident. I heard people saying Americans had been killed in the city. At the beginning, a lot of people were surprised. They were asking, how did Americans get to Fallujah? It's crazy. They never came here because the city was so dangerous. Yes, I recall that day very well.
Ahmed Haki lived in the neighborhood. He was a direct witness to this event, whose footage made the rounds worldwide. In these images, Iraqis are overjoyed, dragging the burnt, lifeless bodies of the mercenaries through the streets, up until the spot they were hanged. Gruesome shots that sent shockwaves around the world.
It was a crucial moment, a historic moment for the city. From this point onward, there were many more wars, more misfortunes, more calamities. That day, the American army made Fallujah its top target. Fallujah became enemy number one. After this incident, the city became different.
The city was pummeled by American jets and weapons, and the streets gave way to brutal urban warfare, US soldiers battling insurgents. At the time, Ahmed Haki started writing poems as a form of catharsis, fighting the sense of overwhelm.
Why does death love us? Why are there funerals at our doors every day? Why does everything that we ask for in this world become so violent, grabbing us by the neck? I swear to you, we are good souls, but oh brother, why does this world only appear as a tremor of problems? I know cities palpitating with life, where today wander only ghosts.
Since then, Ahmed hasn't stopped writing.
The history of Fallujah is very painful. I try to talk about it, to talk about a lot of events, even if I can't talk about everything. Things were just so difficult here. But the death and the destruction we saw here on a daily basis need to be documented. And one of the servants of this documentation, one of history's assistants among Arab people, is the poet.
At the time, this tragic history was written largely by the insurgents as they relentlessly fought US soldiers. But what have they become today? Did most join terrorist groups? We retraced the footsteps of one. Speaking anonymously and in a secret location, they agreed to share their story.
I was a soldier in 2003. When the Americans invaded, they dismantled the army. I had nothing. Then we got a call from Saddam Hussein to defend the country. The tribes put out a call to take arms for honor and for the land. All the revolutionaries, including myself, followed the call. We joined resistance groups. At the beginning, you have to understand that everybody had weapons. Some went and found equipment, others fought, others delivered messages, others did intelligence, but it was all civilians.
Al-Qaeda took advantage of the chaos, rooting itself in the city at the beginning of 2004. Some insurgents joined the movement, others put down their weapons.
The resistance was betrayed when Al-Qaeda entered the city, and according to its own means, the true resistance fighters stepped back. They didn't join Al-Qaeda because their members legitimized the murder of police, the National Guard, Iraqis. Our only enemies were the Americans.
Today, these former rebels no longer speak of their past, for fear of being associated with these terrorist groups.
No. Most left Iraq or died in any case. With the others, we restarted our lives. Even if some were disabled, we exchanged greetings, but that's it.
The period marked many Fallujah residents for life. Nearly 2 decades later, the wounds of the past are still open, and particularly among civilians. Many perished in the bloodshed.
السلام عليكم كيف حالك؟ إن شاء الله بخير بس على مود والدي بركي نشوف النيابة السجلات إذا عندك.
Abdelmonem al-Kubasi lost contact with his father on November 10, 2004. Too old to leave the city, then controlled by insurgents, he was taken into custody by American soldiers. At the time, they were picking up all men in the city without distinction. With his brother, Abdelmonem continues the search for the body of his father nearly 20 years later, with little hope.
We know he was transferred to the prison of Buka after being detained for some time at the prison of Abu Ghraib. Then we lost track of him. We received a request to visit one day, so we went to Buka. But over there they told us he was at Abu Ghraib, and then vice versa. All these years we've searched medical and legal institutes, cemeteries, we asked NGOs, but nobody knows where my father is.
According to a Red Cross report in 2004, some 70 to 90% of U.S. prisoners detained at the time had been arrested by mistake.
My father's body was forcibly disappeared. We just want to know what happened. If he's dead, give us his body. And if he's still living, let him go.
This, too, is the legacy of the war. Tens of thousands still looking for answers. Hassan, the guardian of the cemetery, sees desperate families come through every month.
All these lines here, these are unknown people. We have more than 1,200. Many died in the streets of Fallujah. Their bodies were too mutilated, their faces unrecognizable, and they didn't have ID on them. We asked all the NGOs and the government to find out their identities, to do DNA tests. But nothing has been done. The government has never come back here.
Several government sources confirmed the lack of initiative in recent years, as jihadists could be found among the victims. According to them, the topic is too sensitive to address, even if in Fallujah, civilians account for more than 3,500 of the dead. After all these years, without closure, without justice, how do the residents of Fallujah rebuild? As they did before, they're taking initiative themselves. Every week, residents hold poetry readings.
Thank you to everyone for coming.
Ahmed Haki is here, trying to overcome the wounds of these last years.
I won't write anymore. No, I won't write any more about death. I won't write any more about death, and my country, you must understand my decision. Let's build castles now. Let's build farms. The shadow of the palm tree is my house. We'll have many new buildings. I'll construct as intensely as they seek my destruction.
Art as a remedy, one of the only ones residents have found as they try and rebuild.
Poets have an impact on the public, on others. That's why we're asking today for life and love in our texts, for peace. Few poems that we hear today talk about death and weapons, and this has an impact on people.
Fallujah, city of rebels, of martyrs, will it one day become the city of love and peace depicted by these poets? That's the dream for many here, even if the path remains long and filled with many obstacles.
Lucile Wassermann with Cole Stangler reporting for us this week. Don't forget, you can catch that edition and all the previous ones as well on our website at france24.com. More news coming up very shortly. Thanks so for watching.